gunshot echoed through the underground parking garage before anyone could scream. Kim Jae-won didn't flinch. He stood perfectly still, his Armani suit absorbing the dim fluorescent light as blood pooled around the body at his feet. His right-hand man, Min-ho, lowered the weapon and waited for orders. This was supposed to be a simple negotiation. The Russian had gotten greedy. Now he was dead. "Clean this up," Jae-won said, his voice flat and emotionless. "I have an event to attend." 30 minutes later, he walked into the Lotus Garden, Seoul's most exclusive underground venue, where Korea's elite gathered behind closed doors. Tonight was a charity gala, though everyone knew charity was just the mask worn over transactions of power, influence, and control. The room glittered with designer gowns and tailored suits. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with gold leaf. Champagne flowed like water. And the women. God, there were so many women. 50 of them, to be exact. Models, influencers, socialites, actresses, each more stunning than the last. They had positioned themselves strategically throughout the venue, each hoping to catch the eye of Seoul's most dangerous bachelor. They whispered his name like a prayer and a curse. The Devil of Gangnam, the untouchable king. The man who owned half the city's underground and showed his face in public just often enough to remind everyone who really held the power. Jae-won moved through the crowd with the precision of a predator. His dark eyes swept over faces without truly seeing them. A model in a red dress stepped directly into his path, her practiced smile full of invitation. He walked around her without acknowledgement. Another tried to engage him in conversation near the bar. He signaled to Min-ho, who intercepted her with polite firmness. He had learned long ago that beautiful faces were the most dangerous weapons. They made men weak. They created vulnerabilities. And in his world, vulnerability meant death. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as he made his way toward the main hall. Whispers followed him like shadows. "Did you see? He didn't even look at them. I heard he hasn't dated anyone in 5 years. They say his heart died the same night his brother did." Jae-won ignored it all. He had perfected the art of not feeling, not caring, not being human. And then he saw her. She wasn't supposed to be there, not in the way the others were. She wore a simple black uniform with a white apron, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She was balancing a tray of champagne glasses, moving between tables with quiet efficiency. She was a waitress. Nobody important. Nobody who mattered. She was black, a rarity in Seoul's homogeneous landscape, and she carried herself with a grace that had nothing to do with seeking attention. She wasn't performing for anyone. She was simply working, focused on her task, invisible to everyone in the room. Everyone except him. He stopped walking. Min-ho nearly collided with his back. "Boss!" Jae-won didn't respond. He couldn't. Because at that exact moment, she glanced up from her tray and their eyes met across the crowded room. And she smiled. Not the calculated, seductive smile he'd seen 1,000 times. Not the practiced expression of someone who wanted something from him. This was different. Genuine. Warm. The kind of smile that suggested she saw a person, not a reputation. The kind of smile that seemed to say, "I see you, and you're just another human being in this room." It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then she looked away, continuing her rounds as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Jae-won's chest tightened. An unfamiliar sensation he couldn't name. His carefully constructed walls trembled. For the first time in 5 years, he felt something other than emptiness. He forced himself to move forward, but his eyes tracked her across the room. She delivered drinks to a table of businessmen who didn't acknowledge her existence. She picked up empty glasses from a corner where 3 socialites laughed too loudly. She smiled politely at a drunk guest who grabbed her wrist, gently extracting herself without causing a scene. "Boss, the Kim Corporation chairman wants to speak with you," Min-ho said quietly. "Who is she?" Jae-won asked, still watching the waitress. Min-ho followed his gaze, surprise flickering across his usually impassive face. I don't know. Should I find out?" "Yes, boss. Now." Min-ho disappeared into the crowd. Jae-won finally tore his eyes away from her and forced himself to engage in the political theater that these events required. He shook hands with men who feared him while pretending to respect him. He listened to proposals and veiled threats. He made promises he had no intention of keeping. But part of his mind remained on her. That smile. That moment of genuine human connection in a room full of beautiful masks. 15 minutes later, Min-ho returned with information. Her name is Zara Johnson, 26 years old. She's been in Seoul for 8 months, working 3 jobs to send money back to her family in Atlanta. She's a student, linguistics major at Seoul National University. No criminal record, no debts, no connections to any organization. She's nobody. Nobody? Jae-won repeated, the word tasting strange in his mouth. Boss, with all respect, this is dangerous. If anyone notices your interest, they won't. But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. Because across the room, he saw the model in the red dress staring at Zara with undisguised hostility. She had noticed where his attention went. And if she had noticed, others would too. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of meaningless conversations and calculated smiles. Jae-won played his role perfectly, the untouchable king surveying his domain. But his eyes kept finding her, watching the way she moved, the way she handled difficult guests with quiet dignity, the way she seemed completely unaware that the most dangerous man in Seoul couldn't stop thinking about her. At one point, an older guest, clearly drunk, knocked over his wine glass, spilling red liquid across the white tablecloth. Zara was there immediately, cleaning up the mess with practiced efficiency, while the man berated her for something that wasn't her fault. She never lost her composure, never showed anger or frustration. She simply did her job and moved on. Jae-won felt something dark and possessive stir in his chest. He wanted to walk over there and break the drunk man's jaw for speaking to her that way. Instead, he finished his whiskey and reminded himself why he had rules, why he never got attached, why he had locked away every human emotion 5 years ago and thrown away the key. His brother had died because Jae-won had been weak, because he had cared about someone more than he cared about staying alert. The rival gang had exploited that weakness, using his brother as bait to draw him into a trap. Jae-won had survived. His brother hadn't. He had sworn that night that he would never be weak again. Never care about anyone enough to create a vulnerability. Never let emotion override strategy. And he had kept that promise. For 5 years he had been a machine. Cold, efficient, untouchable. Until a woman he didn't know smiled at him like he was human. The gala ended near midnight. Guests filed out into the Seoul night, climbing into their luxury cars and limousines. Jae-won lingered near the entrance, pretending to finish a conversation while actually waiting to see her leave. She emerged from the service entrance 20 minutes later, wearing jeans and a worn jacket over her uniform. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder and exhaustion written across her face. She checked her phone, frowned at whatever she saw there, and started walking toward the subway station. Follow her, Jae-won told Min-ho. Make sure she gets home safely. Boss, don't let her see you. Min-ho's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He knew better than to argue when Jae-won used that tone. Jae-won climbed into his own car, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. That smile had cracked something open inside him, something he had worked very hard to keep sealed shut. Over the next 3 days, he learned everything about Zara Johnson. She lived in a tiny apartment in Hongdae, sharing it with 2 other international students. She worked at the Lotus Garden on weekends, at a cafe near campus on weekday mornings, and tutored English in the evenings. She sent 60% of her earnings back to her mother and younger siblings in Atlanta. She studied late into the night. She had no social life to speak of. She was in Seoul because a scholarship had offered her an escape from a struggling neighborhood and a future with limited options. She was surviving, not living, fighting, not dreaming, and she had no idea that one of Seoul's most dangerous men had become obsessed with understanding why her smile had affected him so profoundly. This needs to stop, Min-ho said on the 4th day, his voice tight with concern. People are noticing. The Kim Corporation is asking questions. The Huang Syndicate is watching you more closely. If they realize you have a weakness. She's not a weakness, Jae-won interrupted. Then what is she? He didn't have an answer. The following Saturday, he returned to the Lotus Garden. Not for business. Not for politics. Just to see her again. She was there, moving through the crowd with the same quiet efficiency. This time, he didn't just watch from afar. He positioned himself near the bar where she would inevitably need to pick up drinks. When she approached, he was ready. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carefully neutral. She looked up, and recognition flickered in her dark eyes. "Yes, sir, sir." As if he were just another customer. As if she had no idea who he was. "You work hard," he said, the words feeling clumsy and insufficient. She smiled, that same genuine smile that had haunted him for a week. "Thank you. Pays the bills." "You're a student?" Her smile faltered slightly, replaced by wariness. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No," he said honestly, "but I'd like to change that." She studied him for a long moment, her intelligent eyes assessing. "I appreciate the interest, but I'm here to work, not to socialize. If you'll excuse me." She moved to step around him, but he couldn't let her go. "Not yet. One conversation," he said. 5 minutes. After your shift." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" She met his gaze directly, and he saw something in her expression that surprised him. Not fear, but caution born from experience. "Because men like you don't just want conversations. And I can't afford complications. Men like me. Wealthy. Powerful. Used to getting what they want." She adjusted her tray. "I've seen how this story ends. It never ends well for the waitress." Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the crowd with practiced efficiency. Jae-won stood there, stunned. She had rejected him. Not because she didn't know who he was, but because she did, or at least she knew his type. She had sized him up in 30 seconds and decided he wasn't worth the risk. It should have offended him. Instead, it intrigued him even more. "She turned you down," Min-ho observed, appearing at his elbow. "Good. Maybe now you'll find out everything about her schedule," Jae-won interrupted. "Where she studies, where she works, what routes she takes." "Boss, this is becoming dangerous. The models from last week have been spreading rumors. Some of them have connections to rival families. If anyone decides to use her against you, then make sure no one touches her." Min-ho's expression darkened. "You're assigning protection to a woman you've spoken to once? You have your orders." The next 2 weeks passed in a strange dance of proximity and distance. Jae-won found excuses to be places where Zara would be. The cafe where she worked mornings, the library where she studied, the street corner where she waited for the bus. He never approached her directly. He simply existed in her orbit like a planet drawn to a sun it couldn't quite reach. And she noticed. He saw the moment she realized he wasn't a coincidence. It was a Tuesday afternoon. She was leaving the library, her backpack heavy with books. She stopped on the steps and turned, her eyes scanning the plaza until they found him sitting at an outdoor cafe across the street. Their eyes locked. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she walked straight toward him. Her expression a mix of frustration and something that might have been fear. "Why are you following me?" she demanded, stopping at his table. "I'm not following you," he said calmly. "I'm simply existing in the same city. Don't insult my intelligence. I've seen you 4 times this week in different locations. That's not a coincidence." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You're observant." "I'm careful." "There's a difference." She crossed her arms. "What do you want from me?" "To understand." "Understand what?" "Why your smile affected me the way it did." The honesty seemed to catch her off guard. Some of the tension left her shoulders, replaced by confusion. "My smile? At the gala? You looked at me and smiled like I was just another person. Like I wasn't." "Wasn't what?" He couldn't finish the sentence. How did he explain that her simple act of genuine kindness had shattered 5 years of carefully constructed emotional armor? She sighed and pulled out the chair across from him, sitting down with visible reluctance. Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but I can't be part of it. I have a life here. A small, careful life that I've worked hard to build. I can't afford to get involved with someone like you. Someone like me, he repeated. You don't even know who I am. I know enough. Expensive suits. Private security following you everywhere. She gestured to Min-ho, who was trying to blend into the background several tables away. Men who look at you like you're their entire world. That kind of power doesn't come from legitimate business. She was right, of course. And her awareness made her even more dangerous to be around. What if I told you I could help you? He asked. Pay off your debts? Support your family? Give you the life you deserve? Her expression hardened. Then I'd say you definitely don't understand me at all. I don't want someone to save me or buy me. I want to build my own life with my own hands. That's the whole point. Even if it means working yourself to exhaustion? 3 jobs, Zara. When do you sleep? She stood abruptly, alarm flashing in her eyes. How do you know my name? I never told you my name. He had made a mistake. Revealed too much too soon. I asked around, he said simply. That's not asking around. That's investigating me. Researching me. She grabbed her backpack. Stay away from me. I mean it. Whatever interest you have, lose it. I'm not interested, and I won't be intimidated into changing my mind. She walked away quickly, her shoulders rigid with tension. Jae-won watched her go, something close to regret tightening in his chest. He had handled that poorly. Scared her when he had meant to intrigue her. Pushed when he should have waited. She's right, you know, Min-ho said, approaching the table. This needs to stop before someone gets hurt. Arrange for her debts to be paid off, Jae-won said. Anonymously. Boss. And increase her security detail. I want eyes on her 24/7. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You're creating the very vulnerability you swore never to have again. Jae-won didn't respond because Min-ho was right. But knowing something was dangerous and being able to stop yourself from doing it were 2 different things. That night, 3 things happened that changed everything. First, Zara's student loan payment was mysteriously forgiven by the university, with a note saying a private benefactor had covered her remaining balance. Second, the model in the red dress, a woman named Yuna who had connections to the Hwang syndicate, started asking questions about the black waitress who had caught Jae-won's attention. Third, someone began following Zara with intentions far less protective than Jae-won's security team. Zara noticed the debt forgiveness first. She stared at the email from the university for a full 10 minutes, reading it over and over, unable to believe what she was seeing. $40,000 in loans. Gone. Just like that. She knew immediately who was responsible. Anger and something more complicated. Gratitude mixed with frustration warred inside her. She wanted to be grateful. This was life-changing money. But accepting it meant accepting his interference in her life. It meant acknowledging the power imbalance between them. It meant becoming dependent on someone she barely knew. She grabbed her phone and started typing a message to who? She didn't even have his number. Didn't know his name. That's when she noticed the car. A black sedan, parked across the street from her apartment. It had been there when she got home from her evening tutoring session, and it was still there now, an hour later. The windows were tinted, but she could see the faint glow of a cigarette inside. Someone was watching her. Fear spiked through her chest. She closed her curtains and double-checked her locks, her heart racing. This wasn't the protective surveillance she had sensed before, the discreet security that had made her feel oddly safe despite being unsettling. This was different, threatening. She tried to convince herself she was being paranoid. Seoul was a safe city. She was overreacting. But at 2 a.m., when she woke to the sound of her doorknob rattling, she knew her instincts had been right. Zara grabbed her phone with shaking hands and dialed emergency services. But before she could press call, her door burst open. 3 men in dark clothing rushed into her apartment. She screamed, but one of them clamped a hand over her mouth while another grabbed her arms. Quiet. One of them hissed in Korean. We're not going to hurt you. We just need to send a message. But Zara didn't speak enough Korean to understand. All she knew was that men had broken into her home and were dragging her toward the door. She fought, kicked, bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth. The man cursed and released her. She scrambled for her phone, but someone kicked it out of her reach. "Make this easy," another man said in broken English. "You come. We take picture. Show to important man. Then you go home. Simple." She didn't believe them for a second. Nothing about this was simple. That's when the window shattered. Min-ho came through it like an avenging angel, his movements precise and lethal. He took down the first attacker in 2 moves, then turned on the second. The third man pulled out a knife, but another member of Jae-won's security team appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn. The fight was over in less than 30 seconds. Zara pressed herself against the wall, her whole body shaking as she watched Min-ho zip-tie the 3 men with practiced efficiency. "Are you hurt?" Min-ho asked her in English, his tone professional but concerned. She shook her head, unable to speak. "These men work for the Hwang Syndicate," he continued. "They were going to use you to send a message to my boss, to prove that he has a weakness they can exploit." "Your boss?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Who is your boss?" Min-ho hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Kim Jae-won. And you need to come with me right now. This apartment isn't safe anymore." She wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but the 3 bound men on her floor and the shattered glass on her carpet made it clear that her carefully constructed safe life in Seoul had just exploded. Min-ho made a phone call in rapid Korean, then turned back to her. "Pack a bag. Quickly. Clothes for a few days, anything you absolutely need. We have about 5 minutes before more of them arrive." "More." The word came out as a squeak. They sent a small team first, to test the security. When these 3 don't report back, they'll send a larger force. That got her moving. She grabbed her backpack and started shoving clothes into it, her hands still shaking. Her mind was racing. Who was Kim Jae-won? What had she gotten herself into? And why had a simple smile at a gala turned into her worst nightmare? She was still asking herself these questions 15 minutes later, when Min-ho pulled up to a luxury high-rise in Gangnam and escorted her into a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint to operate. "Where are we?" she asked. "Somewhere safe." The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood back in Atlanta. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Seoul skyline. Modern furniture that looked like art installations. A kitchen that belonged in a magazine spread. And standing by the windows, backlit by the city lights, was the man from the gala, Kim Jae-won. He turned when they entered, and Zara saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Rage. Barely controlled fury that seemed to vibrate in the air around him. But when he looked at her, the rage softened into something else. Concern. Relief. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. "No," she managed. Min-ho got there in time. He crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped directly in front of her, his dark eyes scanning her face as if checking for injuries he might have missed. "I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. I don't understand what's happening," Zara said, hating how small her voice sounded. "Who are you? Why did those men break into my apartment? What message were they trying to send?" Jae-won glanced at Min-ho, who took it as a dismissal and quietly left the penthouse. "Sit," Jae-won said, gesturing to the couch. "Please." She sat, more because her legs were shaking than because she wanted to obey his command. He sat across from her, maintaining a careful distance. "My name is Kim Jae-won," he began. "I run an organization that operates in the shadows of Seoul. Some people call it the Korean Mafia, though that's an oversimplification. We handle problems that can't be solved through legal channels. We protect territories. We enforce contracts that the courts won't touch." Zara felt like she was falling even though she was sitting still. "You're a criminal. By some definitions, yes. And those men who broke into my apartment? They work for a rival organization. They've been looking for a way to weaken me for months. When they noticed my interest in you, they saw an opportunity. She stood abruptly, anger cutting through fear. Your interest in me? I never asked for your interest. I told you to leave me alone. And instead, you paid off my debts, had me followed, and now I've got people breaking into my home because you couldn't take no for an answer. He stood too, but didn't move closer. You're right. All of this is my fault. I should have stayed away from you. I knew better. I have rules specifically designed to prevent this exact situation. Then why didn't you follow your rules? Because you smiled at me like I was human, he said simply. And I haven't felt human in 5 years. The raw honesty in his voice stopped her anger in its tracks. She stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. The expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. The controlled posture couldn't mask the loneliness. What happened 5 years ago? She asked quietly. He was silent for so long she didn't think he would answer. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the city. I had a younger brother. He was everything I wasn't: kind, optimistic, believing the best in people. He wanted to go to medical school, become a doctor, help people. I tried to keep him separate from my work, from this life. But our rivals found out about him. They used him as bait to draw me into a trap. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. I had to choose between saving him and saving my organization. I chose wrong. Lee Jun died because I hesitated. Because I cared more about one person than I cared about staying alert. That's not choosing wrong, Zara said softly. That's being human. In my world, being human gets you killed. So I stopped. I locked everything away. I became what I needed to be to survive. A machine that makes decisions based on logic and strategy, never emotion. Until I smiled at you. Until you smiled at me, he confirmed. And reminded me of who I used to be, before the violence, before the deaths, when I still believed that kindness and warmth were things worth having in life. Zara didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to run, to get as far away from this dangerous man and his dangerous world as possible. But another part of her, a part she didn't entirely understand, wanted to stay, to understand him better, to see if that glimpse of humanity she'd seen at the gala was real. What happens now? She asked. Now I keep you safe until I can neutralize the threat. The Huang Syndicate will be watching for retaliation. I'll give them something else to focus on. And then you can go back to your life. Your apartment will be secured. You'll have protection you never see. And I'll stay away from you like you asked. It should have been exactly what she wanted. But somehow, the thought of him disappearing from her life made her chest ache. What if I don't want you to stay away? The words came out before she could stop them. His head turned sharply. What? I'm not saying I trust you, or that I understand any of this. But, she struggled to find the right words. You paid off my debts. You've had people protecting me without me even knowing. You could have just taken what you wanted. Men with your kind of power usually do. But you didn't. You asked. And when I said no, you respected that. Until tonight. Tonight wasn't your choice. Those men made the choice. She took a shaky breath. Look, I'm terrified right now. My hands are still shaking. But I'm also seeing something I didn't expect. That maybe you're not the monster everyone says you are. Don't mistake moments of humanity for character, Jae-won said harshly. I've done things that would give you nightmares. I've made choices that you would find unforgivable. The fact that I feel something for you doesn't erase any of that. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just saying, maybe you don't have to be alone. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, stopping so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You have no idea what you're saying. What being close to me means. The danger, the isolation, the constant fear that anyone you care about could become a target. Then explain it to me, she challenged. Stop making decisions for me and actually talk to me like I'm an adult who can make my own choices. They stood there, the tension thick enough to cut. Then, slowly, Jae-won's hand came up to cup her cheek. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, as if he was afraid she might break. I don't know how to do this, he admitted quietly. I don't know how to care about someone without destroying them. Maybe you just forgot, Zara said, echoing the words she'd said to Minho earlier. Maybe you forgot how to let someone care about you too. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. If I do this, if I let myself care about you, I can't guarantee I can keep you safe. Nobody can guarantee that. Safety is an illusion. But maybe being alone is worse than being in danger together. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You're infuriating. You're terrifying. And yet you're still here. And yet you're still touching me. The kiss happened like gravity, inevitable and unstoppable. His lips met hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. She tasted desperation and hope and 5 years of suppressed loneliness all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jae-won stepped back. You should sleep, he said, his voice rough. The guest room is down the hall. You're safe here. Where will you be? Making sure the people who targeted you understand the consequences of their mistake. The cold tone sent a shiver down her spine. This was the other side of him, the dangerous side. The side that ran a criminal empire and made people disappear. Don't kill anyone because of me, she said. I won't kill anyone who doesn't deserve it, he replied. There's a difference. He left before she could argue, leaving her alone in the massive penthouse with her thoughts and her fears and the ghost of his kiss still burning on her lips. The next morning, Zara woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. She found Jae-won in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept at all. The Hwang Syndicate has agreed to a meeting, he said without preamble. They want to discuss terms. What kind of terms? Territory, percentage of operations, the usual negotiations. He poured her a coffee without asking, somehow knowing she took it black. You'll stay here while I handle it. Like hell I will. He looked up sharply. This isn't negotiable. Everything is negotiable. You don't get to lock me in a tower while you go play gangster politics. This isn't a game, Zara. I know that. I'm the one they broke into last night, remember? But I'm also not going to sit here helplessly while you make decisions about my safety without me. What exactly do you think you can contribute to a meeting with people who would kill you without hesitation? I can contribute my voice, my perspective, and maybe I can remind you to stay human while you're negotiating with monsters. He stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. You're going to get yourself killed. Or maybe I'll keep you from making a decision you'll regret. In the end, she wore him down. Or maybe he just wanted her close enough to protect. Either way, for hours later, Zara found herself in a private room in an upscale restaurant, watching Kim Jae-won negotiate with people who looked like they stepped out of a crime drama. The Hwang Syndicate was represented by 3 men and 1 woman. The model in the red dress from the gala, Yuna. She looked at Zara with open hostility. So this is the waitress who's caused so much trouble, Yuna said in English, her accent perfect. I have to admit, Jae-won, your taste has gotten exotic. Watch your mouth, Jae-won said, his voice deadly quiet. Or what? You'll start a war over a woman you barely know? That doesn't sound like the legendary Devil of Gangnam. That sounds like a man who's lost his edge. The older man at the head of the table, clearly the leader, raised a hand. Enough, Yuna. We're here to negotiate, not to trade insults. Then let's negotiate, Jae-won said. You sent men to someone under my protection. That's a violation of our treaty. By rights, I could respond with force. And you'd be justified. The leader agreed. Which is why we're here. To avoid bloodshed. To find a solution that benefits us both. What solution? Simple. You give us the Itaewon territory, and we forget about the waitress. No harm, no retaliation. Clean slate. Itaewon was worth millions. It was one of Jae-won's most profitable territories. Zara expected him to refuse immediately. Instead, he went very still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. You want me to trade territory for her safety, he said slowly. Think of it as insurance. Proof that you're willing to put business before personal entanglements. Jae-won looked at Zara, something unreadable in his expression. Then he turned back to the Hwang representative. No. No. Yuna laughed. You're choosing a waitress over territory worth. I'm choosing to remind you who you're dealing with. Jae-won interrupted, his voice dropping to a temperature that made the room feel 10 degrees colder. You made a mistake when you targeted her. You showed me that you're desperate enough to break our treaty. Desperate enough to make threats. Which means you're weaker than you want me to believe. He leaned forward. So here's my counteroffer. You publicly apologize for the attack. You hand over everyone involved. And you give me information on your supplier in Busan. In exchange, I don't dismantle your entire operation. You can't be serious, the leader said. Try me. The tension in the room was suffocating. Zara could barely breathe. If you go to war over this girl, Yuna said, her voice shaking with rage, you'll lose everything. Your reputation. Your allies. Your territory. Is she really worth that? Jae-won stood, and everyone else immediately tensed. She's worth more than all of this. And if you ever threaten her again, I'll show you exactly what I'm capable of. He held out his hand to Zara. She took it, her heart pounding, and let him lead her out of the restaurant. They didn't speak until they were in the car, Minho driving in tense silence. You just declared war, Zara said quietly. Over me. I made a strategic decision, Jae-won corrected, but his hand was still gripping hers tightly. That wasn't strategy. That was emotion. Maybe, he turned to look at her. Or maybe I'm tired of pretending I don't care about anything. Maybe 5 years of being a machine is enough. They're going to come after you now. After both of us. Let them try. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Zara didn't recognize. Minho opened the door, his expression grim. Boss, we need to talk. Alone. Jae-won nodded and turned to Zara. Wait here. 5 minutes. She watched them walk to the far corner of the garage. Their conversation too quiet to hear but clearly heated. Minho was gesturing emphatically. Jae-won's posture was rigid, defensive. When they returned, Minho looked defeated and Jae-won looked determined. What's happening? Zara asked. The Hwang Syndicate has allies, Jae-won said. 3 other organizations. If they decide to unite against me, I'll be outnumbered 4-1. Then give them what they want. Give them the territory. No. Jae-won. No. He repeated more firmly. The moment I show weakness, the moment I prove that I can be manipulated through someone I care about, I'm finished. Every rival in Seoul will come for me. They'll use you as leverage forever. The only way to protect you is to show them that threatening you only makes things worse for them. So what? You're going to fight a war you can't win. I'm going to fight a war I refuse to lose. Over the next 3 days, Seoul's underworld held its breath. Alliances shifted. Meetings happened in darkened rooms. Weapons changed hands. Everyone was waiting to see if the Devil of Gangnam would back down or if blood would run in the streets. Zara stayed in the penthouse, protected by a rotating security team. Jae-won came and went at odd hours, looking more exhausted each time. She wanted to tell him to stop, to give up this fight. But she also understood what he was really fighting for, not territory, not reputation, but the right to be human. The right to care about someone without it being used as a weapon against him. On the 4th day, everything changed. Zara was reading in the living room when Jae-won burst through the door, Minho close behind him. His face was pale, his usual composure shattered. What happened? She asked, standing immediately. Yuna, he said, his voice rough. She's dead. Murdered. And they're blaming me. What? How? Someone shot her in her apartment 2 hours ago. The Hwang Syndicate is claiming I ordered the hit as retaliation for the meeting. They're calling for my head. But you didn't do it. Doesn't matter. They have witnesses who say they saw my men in the area. They have evidence planted at the scene. He ran a hand through his hair. Someone is setting me up. Someone who wants both organizations to destroy each other. Who would benefit from that? Every other syndicate in Seoul, Min-ho answered. If Hwang and Kim go to war, we weaken each other. Makes it easier for someone else to take control. Jae-won's phone rang. He answered it, listened for 30 seconds, and his expression went from tense to murderous. They have your roommates, he said to Zara after hanging up. The Hwang syndicate grabbed them an hour ago. They're demanding I turn myself over in exchange for their release. The world tilted. Sarah and Jean? But they have nothing to do with this. They have everything to do with this now. This is how war works, Zara. Innocent people become casualties. She felt sick. Sarah was a nursing student from Canada. Jean was an economics major from Taiwan. They were her friends. They had welcomed her into their apartment, shared meals with her, helped her practice Korean. And now they were in danger because she had smiled at the wrong man. I have to go, she said. I have to trade myself for them. Absolutely not. They're innocent. I'm the one you want. I'm the one they're using as leverage. Let me fix this. If you turn yourself over, they'll kill you to send me a message. Then they'll kill your roommates anyway because witnesses are liabilities. Then what do we do? Jae-won looked at Min-ho, and some silent communication passed between them. Then he turned back to Zara. We do something I swore I'd never do again. We trust someone. He made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, speaking in Korean too fast for Zara to follow. When he finished, he looked exhausted but resolved. I've called in every favor I'm owed. Every alliance I've carefully built over the past 5 years. In 2 hours, representatives from 7 different organizations will meet at a neutral location. We're going to find out who's setting us up, and we're going to end this before more people die. Will it work? It has to, because the alternative is a bloodbath. The meeting took place in an abandoned warehouse in Incheon. Zara insisted on coming despite Jae-won's protests. She needed to see this through. Needed to understand the world she had stumbled into. The warehouse was filled with dangerous men in expensive suits. 7 organizations, each represented by their leaders. The tension was so thick it felt like a physical presence. The Hwang representative, the older man from the restaurant, stood at one end. Jae-won stood at the other. Between them was a long table covered in documents and photographs. Someone in this room is playing us against each other, Jae-won said without preamble. Someone who benefits from our war. We find them, we end this. Or, the Hwang leader said, you're lying and you did kill Yuna. If I wanted Yuna dead, I would have killed her years ago when she first betrayed your organization to work with the Russians. Don't act like her hands were clean. Several people in the room shifted uncomfortably. Clearly, Yuna's Russian connection was news to some of them. You have proof of this? Someone asked. Jae-won nodded to Min-ho, who placed a folder on the table. Bank transfers, meeting records, communications. Yuna was selling your secrets to the Russians for 3 years. The question is, did she tell them she was planning to start a war between Hwang and Kim? Or did they decide that on their own? The room erupted in arguments. Accusations flew. Alliances that had seemed solid minutes ago began to crack. And in the chaos, Zara saw something everyone else missed. One man, younger than the others, representing a smaller organization, was too quiet, too calm. While everyone else argued and accused, he simply watched with barely concealed satisfaction. She moved closer to Jae-won and whispered in his ear. The man in the blue suit, far left. He's enjoying this. Jae-won's eyes flicked to the man, then back to her. He squeezed her hand once, acknowledgement, then raised his voice. Park Ji-hoon, he said, and the room went quiet. You've been very silent during all of this. Don't you have an opinion on who killed Yuna? Ji-hoon's smile was cold. I'm just here to observe. My organization is too small to have a stake in this conflict. Is that why you've been quietly buying up property in both Hwang and Kim territories over the past month? Because you're too small to have a stake. Ji-hoon's expression flickered just for a second. But it was enough. You're the one who's been setting this up? Jae-won continued, moving around the table like a predator circling prey. You paid someone to kill Yuna. You planted evidence pointing to me. You want us to destroy each other so you can sweep in and take our territories while we're weak. That's absurd, Ji-hoon said, but sweat had appeared on his forehead. Then you won't mind if we search your offices, check your financial records, interview your people. The other leaders were watching now, predatory interest in their eyes. If Ji-hoon had been playing them all, he had made enemies of everyone in the room. Fine, Ji-hoon said, standing abruptly. Search whatever you want. You'll find nothing. Already have, Min-ho said, entering the warehouse with 3 men in tow. These are Ji-hoon's lieutenants. They've agreed to testify in exchange for protection. They'll tell you all about how Ji-hoon hired Russian mercenaries to kill Yuna, how he planted my boss's cigarette butts at the scene, how he kidnapped the roommates to force a confrontation. Ji-hoon lunged for the door, but he didn't make it 3 steps before 2 of the other leader's men grabbed him. Where are the roommates? Jae-won demanded, his voice deadly quiet. I don't know what you're talking about. Jae-won moved so fast Zara barely saw it. One moment he was across the room, the next he had Ji-hoon by the throat, slammed against the wall. Tell me where they are, or I will take you apart piece by piece in front of everyone here. And no one will stop me, because you just made enemies of every person in this room. Warehouse? In Incheon, Ji-hoon choked out. Abandoned shipping facility. They're alive. I swear they're alive. Jae-won released him with disgust and turned to the Hwang representative. Send your men with mine. We bring the roommates back safely, and this ends. The older man nodded slowly. Agreed. Ji-hoon played us both. His punishment should be decided together. Agreed. What happened to Ji-hoon after that, Zara never knew. Jae-won made sure she was in the car with Min-ho, heading to Incheon to retrieve her roommates, before the other leaders decided his fate. They found Sarah and Jean terrified but unharmed, tied up in a cold warehouse but otherwise untouched. Sarah sobbed when she saw Zara. Jean just looked shell-shocked. I'm so sorry, Zara kept saying as Min-ho's team cut them free. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. What the hell did you get involved in? Sarah asked through tears. I'll explain everything. Promise. But first, let's get you somewhere safe. They were taken to a hotel, neutral territory with heavy security. Jae-won arrived an hour later, looking exhausted but satisfied. It's over, he told Zara. Ji-hoon confessed to everything. The other organizations have agreed to peace. Your roommates are safe. You're safe. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt hollow. How many people died because I smiled at you? She asked quietly. 1. Yuna. And she was going to die anyway for her betrayal to the Russians. This isn't on you, Zara. It feels like it is. He sat beside her on the couch, careful to maintain some distance. I told you my world was dangerous. I told you that being close to me would put you at risk. You didn't believe me. I believed you. I just thought. I don't know what I thought. You thought you could handle it. That you were strong enough. He smiled sadly. You are strong enough. Stronger than anyone I've ever met. You saw something in that warehouse that trained killers missed. You saved the day by trusting your instincts. I don't feel like a hero. Heroes rarely do. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Zara asked the question that had been burning in her mind. What happens now? Between us? Jae-won's expression closed off. Now I keep my promise. I stay away from you. You go back to your life. You're safe now. The threats have been neutralized. You don't need my protection anymore. What if I want more than protection? Zara, what if I want you? He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. You don't know what you're saying. You're traumatized, grateful, confused. But you don't actually want a life with me. Stop telling me what I want. She stood too, anger flaring. I'm an adult. I know my own mind. And I know that when I look at you, I see someone who spent 5 years punishing himself for being human. Someone who thinks he doesn't deserve happiness or connection or love. I don't. Says who? Your guilt? Your grief. She moved closer. You made a choice 5 years ago. A human choice. You chose your brother over strategy, and he died anyway. That's tragedy, Jae-won. Not failure. Not something you need to atone for by being alone forever. Everyone close to me dies. I'm still alive. So is Minho. So are dozens of people in your organization who trust you with their lives every day. She reached up and cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. You're not cursed. You're not a monster. You're just a man who forgot how to forgive himself. If I let myself care about you, really care about you, I won't be able to do what needs to be done. I'll hesitate. I'll make mistakes. And those mistakes will get people killed. Or maybe caring about someone will remind you what you're fighting for. Maybe it'll make you stronger, not weaker. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be both the man you need and the leader my organization needs. Then we figure it out together. One day at a time. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. He opened his eyes, and she saw something in them she hadn't seen before. Hope, fragile and uncertain, but real. If we do this, he said slowly, there are rules. You finish your degree. You keep your independence. You maintain your own life outside of mine. I won't let you become just an accessory to my world. Agreed. And you have to promise me something too. What? That you'll try. Really try to be human again. Not just for me, but for yourself. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. He laughed. An actual laugh, and it sounded rusty from disuse but genuine. What are you doing to me, Zara Johnson? Reminding you that you're alive, she said simply. The next 6 months were the hardest of Zara's life. Finishing her degree while navigating a relationship with Seoul's most dangerous man required a delicate balance. There were late nights when he couldn't tell her where he'd been. Mornings when he came home with bruises he wouldn't explain. Moments when the violence of his world crashed into her carefully constructed normal life. But there were also quiet evenings in the penthouse, cooking dinner together. Weekends when he insisted she focus on her studies instead of worrying about him. Slow dances in the kitchen at 2 a.m. when neither of them could sleep. He introduced her to his organization gradually, letting them see that she wasn't a weakness but a strength. That she challenged him, grounded him, reminded him to be strategic instead of just brutal. She met his mother, a frail woman living in a care facility, ravaged by dementia. Jae-won visited her every Sunday, sitting by her bed and telling her stories even though she rarely recognized him anymore. She used to tell me I had too much heart, he said one afternoon, holding his mother's hand while she slept. That it would get me killed in this business. Maybe she was right. Or maybe she knew that a man without a heart isn't really living, Zara replied. Sarah and Jean eventually forgave her, though their friendship was never quite the same. They moved out of the shared apartment, wanting distance from the danger that followed Zara around. She understood. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be fully rebuilt. But new bridges formed. She became friends with Minho's wife, a pediatric surgeon who had somehow made peace with loving a man in the criminal underworld. She learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when danger was close. She developed her own network of protection and information. She didn't become part of Jae-won's world. She existed alongside it, maintaining her own identity while supporting his. And slowly, gradually, Jae-won began to change. He made fewer decisions based purely on violence. He looked for diplomatic solutions before resorting to force. He started talking about succession plans, about eventually stepping back from active leadership. I want to build something that can run without me constantly having to spill blood to maintain it, he told her one night. Something sustainable. Something I won't be ashamed to look back on. That's growth, she said, smiling. That's you, he corrected. You make me want to be better than I am. But the underworld doesn't let go of its players easily. The crisis came 13 months after the warehouse meeting. A new organization emerged, led by Ji-hoon's younger brother. They wanted revenge for Ji-hoon's death. They wanted Jae-won's territory. And they wanted Zara's head as payment for their loss. You need to leave Seoul, Jae-won said, his voice steady but his eyes desperate. Tonight. Minho has arranged everything. You'll be on a plane to Atlanta in 3 hours. I'm not running. This isn't running. It's surviving. These people won't stop until you're dead. I can't protect you and fight them at the same time. Then don't fight them. Walk away. We'll both leave. Start over somewhere else. If I walk away, they'll hunt me forever. They'll use you to hurt me for the rest of our lives. The only way to keep you safe is to end this. Permanently. She saw it in his eyes, the decision he'd already made. The choice that echoed his brother's death 5 years ago. You're going to trade yourself for my safety, she said, her voice breaking. I'm going to do what I should have done before you ever smiled at me. I'm going to protect you at any cost. Even if that cost is your life? Especially then. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me very carefully. If you die for me, if you sacrifice yourself thinking it's some noble gesture, I will never forgive you. Do you understand? I will spend the rest of my life hating you for making that choice. Better you hate me alive than love me dead. That's not your decision to make. Yes, it is. This is my world. My consequences. My choice. They argued for hours. She threatened. She pleaded. She tried everything she could think of to change his mind. But in the end, Kim Jae-won was still the Devil of Gangnam. And he had made his decision. She woke the next morning to find him gone. A note on the pillow said simply, I'm sorry. Live well. Be happy. Forget me. But she couldn't forget him. Wouldn't forget him. She called Minho, who reluctantly told her where the final confrontation would happen. An abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Seoul. Jae-won was meeting Ji-hoon's brother alone. No backup, no weapons, no protection. Betrayed. His life for peace. Zara grabbed her phone and did something she had sworn she would never do. She called every contact in Jae-won's organization that she had slowly built relationships with over the past year. She explained what was happening. She asked for help. And they came. Because over the past year she had proven herself. Not as Jae-won's weakness, but as someone who understood their world while bringing something new to it. Compassion. Strategy that didn't rely on violence alone. A perspective that reminded them they were human beings, not just soldiers. They arrived at the industrial complex to find Jae-won on his knees, surrounded by Ji-hoon's men. His face was bloodied, but his expression was calm. Accepting. Let him go, Zara called out, stepping into the clearing. Or every organization in Seoul comes down on you. I've made calls. Right now, 7 different leaders are waiting for my signal. You kill him, you start a war you cannot win. Ji-hoon's brother, a young man burning with rage and grief, stared at her. He killed my brother. No, he didn't. Your brother killed himself through his own greed and stupidity. Jae-won just exposed it. She moved closer, her heart pounding but her voice steady. You want revenge? Fine. But understand what you're actually avenging. A man who betrayed every organization in Seoul for his own ambition. A man who would have gotten you killed eventually anyway. My brother was family. And so is Jae-won to the 50 people surrounding this complex right now with weapons trained on every one of your men. You kill him, none of you leave here alive. It was a bluff. Mostly. She had called people, but she had no idea who had actually responded. Then Minho stepped out of the shadows to her left. Then another lieutenant to her right. Then more. Dozens of them appearing from cover, weapons drawn. Not a bluff after all. Ji-hoon's brother looked at the forces arrayed against him and made the smart choice. He lowered his weapon. Get him out of here, he spat. But this isn't over. Yes, it is, Jae-won said, standing slowly despite his injuries. Because I'm done. I'm stepping back from active leadership. Minho will take over operations. I'll remain as an advisor, but I won't be the face of the organization anymore. The announcement shocked everyone, Zara included. You're retiring? Minho asked. I'm choosing life over death, happiness over control. Jae-won looked at Zara. I'm choosing her. For real this time. No more half measures. No more keeping her at arm's length while pretending I'm protecting her. The organization, We'll be fine. Better than fine. You've been ready to lead for 2 years, Minho. You're smarter than me, more patient, less likely to make decisions based on emotion. He smiled. It's time. Zara reached him as his knees buckled, catching him before he fell. You idiot, she whispered. You beautiful, noble, infuriating idiot. I love you, he said, the words raw and honest. I should have said it months ago, but I was afraid. I love you too, and if you ever try to sacrifice yourself for me again, I will kill you myself. He laughed, then winced as the movement aggravated his injuries. Deal. The transition took months. Jae-won didn't disappear from the organization entirely. His reputation and connections were too valuable. But he stepped back from day-to-day operations. He became a consultant, a mediator when conflicts arose, a symbol of what the organization had been while allowing it to evolve into something new. And he built a life with Zara. She finished her degree with honors, got a job teaching English and Korean at an international school, kept her independence and her identity while creating space for him in her world. They moved into a house in a quiet neighborhood, far from Gangnam's glittering excess. They adopted a dog, a scruffy rescue that Jae-won pretended to merely tolerate but spoiled shamelessly. They fought sometimes. The transition from Mafia boss to retired consultant wasn't easy, and old habits died hard. But they learned to communicate, to compromise, to build something together that was stronger than what either could have created alone. 2 years after that night in the industrial complex, Jae-won proposed. Not with the elaborate gesture or public spectacle, but quietly, in their kitchen, while they washed dishes after dinner. Marry me, he said. Zara looked at him. This man who had walked past 50 models without a glance but had frozen when she smiled. This man who had been willing to die for her. This man who chose every single day to be human instead of a machine. Yes, she said simply. The wedding was small. Just close friends and the family members of the organization who had become their extended family. Minho was the best man. His wife was Zara's maid of honor. Jae-won's mother attended, lucid for one precious hour, long enough to see her son happy, long enough to smile at Zara and whisper, "You brought him back to life." Standing at the altar, looking at the woman who had changed everything with a simple smile, Jae-won felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Peace. You know, Zara said as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. People are going to tell this story someday. The Mafia boss who walked past 50 models but froze when a waitress smiled. What will they say? He asked. That you were a man who forgot how to be human until someone reminded you. That love doesn't always look like we expect it to. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let yourself care about someone. And what's the moral of the story? She smiled. That same genuine, warm smile that had started everything. That hearts are stronger than armor. Always. He pulled her closer. This woman who had refused to let him sacrifice himself, who had built an army to save him, who loved him despite understanding exactly who he was. I ignored 50 models, he said softly. But one smile changed my entire destiny. Best decision you ever made? The only decision that mattered. They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by people who had once been soldiers but were now family. And somewhere in Seoul, the city continued its endless dance of light and shadow, danger and beauty, death and life. But in that moment, in that small wedding venue, Kim Jae-won and Zara Johnson had found something rarer than power or control or safety. They had found each other, and that was enough. If you enjoyed the story of second chances and unexpected love, please hit that like button and subscribe for more emotionally powerful long-form narratives. Drop a comment below telling me what you think happened next in Jae-won and Zara's life together. Did they have children? Did the past ever come back to haunt them? Let me know what stories you want to hear next.